Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. In the small town of Eldridge Falls, secrets lay buried beneath the surface, often overlooked by outsiders. The quaint streets were lined with trees that seemed to whisper through the wind, casting shadows over well-maintained lawns and cozy porches. Here, time passed slowly. The rhythm of daily life lulled residents into a false sense of security. But hidden within the idyllic facade was a chilling undercurrent, a knot of untold stories that would resurface in unfathomable ways. On a crisp autumn morning, the townsfolk awoke to a jarring revelation. Just beyond the limits of town, in a secluded stretch of woods, a body had been discovered. The discovery was made by a group of teenagers who usually ventured in search of adventure, but this time they stumbled upon a truth too dark to comprehend. The victim lay at the foot of an ancient oak, its gnarled roots entangling the lifeless form like a grotesque embrace. Panic rippled through Eldridge Falls as news spread. What started as a rumor soon became an unsettling reality. With the sheriff's office inundated with calls, the small police force sprang into action. Detective Clara Rhodes, a seasoned investigator with an eye for detail, was assigned the case. She arrived at the scene, her brow furrowed with concentration as she surveyed the eerie surroundings. The fog clung to the forest floor, wrapping around her legs like a serpent, amplifying the grim atmosphere. In a town where everyone was familiar, the anonymity of death felt alien. As the investigation began, the memory of that day would linger, a distant echo that whispered of hidden truths just waiting to be unearthed. The victim. The early hours of the investigation were consumed with identification. The body, now carefully removed from the scene, was transported to the local coroner's officia, weathered brick building that stood resolutely against the gray sky. Detective Rhodes waited as the coroner, Dr. Helen Carter, prepared to reveal the victim's identity. 25 years old, Dr. Carter began, examining the autopsy report. Her name was Lydia Marsh, local girl. Lived here her whole life. The words struck Rhodes like a gravelly stone. Lydia had been a familiar face, often seen serving coffee at the town diner, with a bright smile that masked deeper, unspoken struggle. As details unfolded, it became clear that Lydia's life was far from perfect. Raised by a single mother who worked tirelessly to make ends meet, Lydia had dreams beyond the diner, aspirations of art school and a career in design. Rumors in town hinted at her troubled relationships, whispers of a volatile romance that had led to an on-again, off-again relationship with a young man named Jake Monroe, known for his charm and arrogance. With every passing moment, Rhodes began to grasp the complexity of a life lived behind the confining curtains of a seemingly simple small town. The autopsy findings noted several bruises on Lydia's limbs, evidence of a struggle. As the circumstances of her death began to paint a haunting picture, Rhodes felt the weight of each new discovery compressing the already shadowy atmosphere of Eldridge Falls. "Not an accident," Dr. Carter said, her gaze pierced. "We will need to consider this a homicide." There it was, a shift from mourning to an investigation awash with unsettling possibility. The winds of change were blowing through the town, but as an icy chill settled in, the question remained. Who would dare to harm the girl with a radiant smile. The crime scene. As the sun dipped below the horizon, leaving an indigo hue draped across Eldridge Falls, Detective Rhodes found herself back at the wooded crime scene. The air, thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves, felt eerily charged. She knew that every twig snapped underfoot might hold a clue, a connection to the violence that had shattered the peace of this once tranquil town. The area around the ancient oak, now cordoned off with yellow tape, bore the weight of a grim history. For the first time since Lydia was found, Rhodes was able to closely examine the setting. The ground was marred with evidence markers, small flags fluttering like banners of sorrow. Each marker signified an item collected: a crushed cigarette pack, a discarded shoe print, and fragments of a broken necklace that dangled near the roots of the tree. "What do we know about the cigarette?" she asked Officer Davis, who was cataloging items for evidence. "Brand is local Trinity Tobacco," he replied, flipping through his notes. "We'll need to check surveillance footage around the shops." A lid, however minor, glimmered in the heavy air. As her gaze shifted to the bruised bark of the oak, recalling the position of the body, Rhodes' heart quickened. It was clear Lydia had not come here willingly. The sheer force required to subdue her was troubling. She kneeled to examine a faint scuff mark on a nearby rock. Could be where she struggled. Rhodes mused, instinctively reaching for her notebook. If someone was here, they wouldn't just leave. They'd be watching. The thought immediately distilled the surrounding serenity into a sense of foreboding. A predator in the heart of the familiar. And Lydia, unwittingly caught in a lethal game. Each hour spent on the case fed the growing tension in town. The shadows crept longer with the fading light, an omen that echoed in the deepest corners of Rhodes' thoughts. The murderer was not just a phantom, but a neighbor, a friend, hidden under the ordinary surface of small-town life. The early investigation. The following morning, the sun broke through a shroud of fog, casting a weary light upon Eldridge Falls. Detective Rhodes convened with her small team at the sheriff's office, their expressions a mix of determination and weariness. On the board hung a photo of Lydia, smile bright against a pastel diner backdrop, juxtaposed with evidence from the crime scene: the broken necklace, the cigarette pack, and a map that outlined the area where she was found. "Let's connect with her friends," Rhodes instructed, voice steady. "They might know more about Lydia's life or the people she was involved with." Her thoughts lingered on Jake Monroe, the boy with charm yet a complex past. But first, they had to validate the stories and fragments that formed the girl behind the smile. They began with Lydia's closest friend, Mia Flanders, who agreed to meet in the diner, their usual haunt. The diner felt heavier than normal, each booth an echo of laughter and shared moments now tainted with loss. Mia's eyes were swollen as she wiped away tears, the grief palpable. She was... As she spoke, rivers of memories flowed, tales of late-night talks, dreams unfulfilled, and nights filled with heartache over Jake Monroe. But Jake was trouble, she added, after a pause, her expression shifting from sorrow to suspicion. They'd break up and get back together. It got messy. Leaning in closer, stepping onto a familiar ground now laden with suspicion. "Did you ever see him hurt her?" she queried softly. Mia shook her head, fear lurking beneath her grief. No, but he could be possessive. Always wanted her to himself. As Rhodes listened, pieces began to align: personal relationships, the unanswered questions, and the shadows dancing between them. The portrait of a girl on the cusp of life, complicated by those who should have loved her most. Each conversation within the diner grew into a whispering chorus of warnings. Eldridge Falls was unraveling before their eyes, unveiling truths layered beneath the surface of its peaceful facade. The dead ends. Days turned into a week, yet progress on the Lydia Marsh case eluded Detective Rhodes like the fading echoes of a once vibrant melody. With each interview conducted, she felt herself entangled in webs of half-truths and veiled suspicion. The townspeople of Eldridge Falls, while cooperative on the surface, tugged nervously at the threads of their own stories, as if afraid the tapestry would unravel at the slightest provocation. She spent the better part of an afternoon following leads that all felt misleading: a friend's brother who claimed to have seen Lydia arguing with a man near the diner, but couldn't provide a description. A waitress who swore she saw Jake Monroe leave the diner on the night of Lydia's disappearance, yet failed to place the timeline accurately. In the solitude of her office, cluttered with documents and photographs, Rhodes compiled her notes into a growing stack of dead ends. The cigarette pack found at the crime scene was traced back to a local brand, but had no singular owner. Multiple patrons frequented the same shops. As for Jake, growing increasingly elusive, his alibi was rock solid, supported by a childhood friend who claimed he was home that night. Feeling the weight of the investigation pressing down like a winter frost, Rhodes turned her attention to social media. She scoured Lydia's online presence, searching for anything that might shed light on her relationships. Posts from friends painted a picture of light and laughter, decorated with hearts and exclamation marks. But a recent picture caught her eye: a group shot with Lydia together with Jake. Yet the tension behind their smiles was palpable. The dead ends were haunting, like a game of chess where all the pieces were laid out, yet the move forward remained elusive. With every fruitless lead, the desperation hided met with the scrutiny of a town holding its breath, waiting for answers. Just as Rhodes prepared to compile another report, a familiar thought nagged at her. The deeper they dug, the more tangled the web became. Perhaps it was time to delve deeper into the shadow of Jake Monroe and the extent of what he really knew. A break in the case. Days melted into each other in Eldridge Falls, the autumn leaves blanketing the ground as if mourning the loss of Lydia Marsh. Detective Rhodes poured herself into the investigation, peeling back layers of lies and untruths. But with no immediate breakthroughs, frustration simmered just beneath her professional demeanor. Each evening she returned home, her mind a cacophony of possibilities and unanswered questions, wrestling with the unsettling weight of a case that refused to yield. It was the morning after another sleepless night when the phone rang. Officer Davis was on the line, his voice tense but tinged with a sense of urgency. "Detective, you're going to want to come to the station. We've received a tip." The sheriff's office buzzed with activity as Rhodes arrived. A young woman, visibly shaken, sat in an interrogation room, her eyes darting nervously. "I don't want to be involved," she stammered, but Officer Davis assured her she would be protected. "My name is Clara," she finally confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "I used to hang out with Jake. I saw him that night." Rhodes leaned in closer, every fiber of her being absorbing the gravity of the moment. "He was with Lydia. They were arguing, and then he was driving away with her." A sudden surge of adrenaline flooded through Rhodes as Clara's story unfolded. She described how she had seen them parked near the woods, the muffled voices rising in anger before hearing the unmistakable sound of a scuffle. Jake's car had pulled away with an urgency that left a knot of dread in her stomach. I thought about going to the police, but I was scared. I didn't want him to know I saw. As the air thickened with implications, Rhodes felt hope flicker in her chest, tempered by the weight of responsibility. This was a significant break in the case, but it also meant diving deeper into the murky waters that surrounded Jake Monroe. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to fall into place, and with Clara's account, a clearer picture of Lydia's final moments began to materialize. Yet, as Rhodes pressed for specifics, a realization dawned on her. This was only the beginning. Delving deeper would not only require her investigative skills, but also a tenacity to confront a killer living amongst them. The suspect. The more Detective Rhodes scrutinized Jake Monroe, the more he began to embody the very essence of a suspect. Known for his charm, he held a magnetic pull over his peers in Eldridge Falls. Yet beneath the surface lay a darkness that now demanded attention. Clara's testimony had shifted the complexion of the case, and now Rhodes needed to unravel exactly how Jake's charming persona had morphed into something sinister. She arranged a meeting with Jake at the sheriff's office. He entered confidently, his shoulders back, eyes scanning the room with an air of arrogance. The practiced smile faltered only when he recognized Rhodes, her steadfast gaze confronting him like an impenetrable wall. "Do you know why you're here, Jake?" she began, noting the way his jaw clenched as she spoke. "No, should I?" he replied, feigning innocence, but Rhodes wasn't swayed by the act. She referenced Clara's account, watching as Jake's demeanor shifted, just slightly. "I know what you did," she pressed, firm but controlled. "You were with Lydia that night," she argued, "and then you drove away. Why?" The silence hung heavy as Jake's bravado faltered, uncertainty flickering across his features. "We had a fight. Why would I hurt her? I loved Lydia." "Lydia is dead," Jake Rhodes stated coldly, watching as he recoiled from the weight of the truth. "And now it's time for you to come clean. What happened?" As the tension thickened, Jake's facade began to crack, unexpected anger replacing indignation. "You don't know anything. I didn't hurt her. We were just arguing. It wasn't supposed to go that far." A moment of vulnerability leaked through the bravado, revealing something deeper, a desperation, as Rhodes tightened her grip around the strings that began to weave tighter. "Just arguing, that's what you call it," she countered. "You don't know where she is, do you? Tell me the truth, Jake. I can help you." His silence lingered like an unanswered question, and for the first time, Rhodes saw a glimpse of fear behind the bravado. The investigation had taken a decisive turn. The suspect was sitting right in front of her, his carefully crafted persona beginning to shatter. In the heart of Eldridge Falls, a chilling realization took root. Betrayal thrived in the shadows of trust, and time was running out to uncover the truth hidden beneath Jake's charm. The trial. The courtroom buzzed with a palpable tension, a mixture of anxious anticipation and reluctant curiosity filling the air. Eldridge Falls had transformed from a hushed town into a stage where secrets were laid bare under the relentless flicker of fluorescent lights. Detectives, reporters, and townsfolk filled the benches, eager for a glimpse of justice in the case that had shattered their quaint community. As the trial commenced, Detective Rhodes sat among the spectators, steeling herself against the flood of emotions that coursed through her. Jake Monroe was seated at the defendant's table, the stoic facade he had worn so well now crumbling as the gravity of the situation settled in. He had pled not guilty, insisting he had no role in Lydia's death. Even now, he carried an air of defiance, yet vulnerability seeped through his bravado. Prosecutor Anna Grayson opened with a powerful statement, detailing the events leading up to Lydia's tragic end, the screams, the struggle, and the damning testimony from Clara, who had bravely stepped forward to corroborate the narrative of violence. Evidence was carefully presented. The fractured necklace found at the crime scene, the cigarette pack traced back to Jake's circle, and the threatening messages from Lydia's phone that illustrated an unhealthy cycle of obsession. As Rhodes listened, her memories flooded back the late nights spent piecing together fragments of Lydia's life, the haunting conversations that lingered in her mind. The emotional weight of the trial pressed against her chest, but she remained composed, determined to stand by the truth that cold autumn night had unveiled. Jake's defense attorney stood with an air of confidence, painting a different picture, a young man caught in an emotional whirlwind, framed by meticulous planning. "This is a case of love gone wrong," he proclaimed. Lydia was a troubled young woman with a history of unstable relationships. The defense maintains that Jake simply couldn't have caused her death. The jury's faces were inscrutable, their gazes flickering between the emotional testimony and Jake's calculated innocence. As days turned into weeks, the trial drew the town's attention deeper into the shadows where lies had festered. Detective Rhodes could see the tide turning. The whispers of doubt mingled with the cries for justice. Ultimately, it would all come down to a single moment. A single decision. The truth had been unearthed, but the jury was yet to decide whether it was enough to bind Jake Monroe's charm in a web of consequence. Put I away. Apology. Why? In Eldridge Falls, hope and despair waltzed a treacherous dance, where the echoes of a vibrant life lost cried out for resolution. The aftermath. As the verdict echoed through the courtroom, time seemed to stretch and contract in an agonizing dance. A mix of relief and disbelief washed over the spectators. The jury had found Jake Monroe guilty of second-degree murder. The reality of the verdict settled like an unwelcome fog, draping over Eldridge Falls, a town forever altered by the events that had unfurled. In the weeks that followed, Detective Rhodes watched as the community grappled with the implications of the trial. The diner, once filled with laughter and familiar faces, felt more like a shadow of its former self. Grief seeped into the very foundations of the town, a palpable silence hanging over conversations as people exchanged shared glances of sorrow. Lydia had been both a local girl and a friend, and now she had become a haunting reminder of the fragility of life. The aftermath of the trial was a bittersweet reckoning. Clara Flanders became something of a reluctant hero, her courage to come forward celebrated by some and vilified by others who felt her information had thrust Eldridge Falls into the spotlight. In stark contrast, Jake's supporters rallied around the notion of his innocence, his charm still weaving a persuasive narrative for those unwilling to accept the jury's decision. Detective Rhodes found herself at a crossroads, reflecting on the case that had consumed so much of her energy and focus. Though justice had been served, the emotional toll lingered like an aching bruise. Even now, the void Lydia left behind remained unfilled. In her memories, she could still hear the laughter of friends, see the vibrant colors of dreams unfulfilled. As the leaves continued to turn and fall in the passing seasons, conversations shifted, yet the tale of Lydia Marsh remained a defining chapter in the town's narrative. For Rhodes, the investigation had underscored a lesson as enduring as the memories of that grim day in the woods. Darkness can thrive even in the brightest of places. She found solace in her determination to protect Eldridge Falls, knowing that every endeavor would serve to keep the memory of Lydia alive, a reminder that the truth, no matter how uncomfortable, must always see the light. In the end, the aftermath was not just about finding a killer, but about unearthing the layers of pain, loss, and resilience woven into the fabric of a community. A somber unity formed in the wake of tragedy, and as the townsfolk watched the trees shed their brittle leaves, they vowed to remember Lydia, not just as a victim, but as a spark that ignited profound change in their small corner of the world. Reflection. Weeks turned into months since the trial concluded, yet Detective Clara Rhodes found herself caught in a cycle of reflection, the weight of Lydia Marsh's case lingering long after the gavel had come down. Rain drummed steadily against the window pane of her office, mirroring the tumult of thoughts racing through her mind. Each drop seemed to echo the whispers of unresolved grief, echoes of laughter, now silenced but still reverberating within the heart of Eldridge Falls. Rhodes leaned back in her chair, recalling the vibrant energy Lydia once infused into the lives of those around her. In her quest for justice, she had uncovered deep wounds within the community. But it wasn't just Jake who had harbored darkness. Shadows of pain lingered beneath the surface, hidden behind well-manicured lawns and friendly smiles. She had seen the communal ties tested and transformed by tragedy, connections severed and rebuilt among fractures. Conversations about moving forward, healing, and remembrance began to take shape, and Rhodes wondered how many stories lay hidden beneath the town's veneer, waiting for someone to listen, to understand. The case had begun as a search for a killer, but had evolved into a profound exploration of loss and vulnerability. Lydia's life was a testament to the fragile balance between joy and despair, and her untimely death had ignited a collective introspection, ushering in a growing awareness of the importance of mental health and support systems in their tight-knit community. As the rain continued to fall, Clara made a decision. She would champion awareness of the struggles that often hid behind closed doors, opening dialogues to allow others to feel less alone in their battles. Through Lydia's story, Clara found a renewed purpose to ensure that no other bright spark would be extinguished unnoticed.